Doctors and nurses, have any of your patients surprised you with their amount or lack of pain tolerance? A friend told me an old boy came in with a large laceration on his arm. Suturing it up took over an hour, but can be quite fun as you can chat to the patients. My friend was engrossed talking to him about his experiences in the Second World War and really enjoyed treating him. The old chap was in good spirits throughout and told him lots of interesting stories about his time behind enemy lines or in trenches in Flanders. After he put the last stitch in, my friend started clearing up and found the local anesthetic bottle unopened. He realized he'd not put any local in at all, and yet the guy didn't once flinch, leave aside complain. When asked why he didn't say anything, he just said, "Oh, I thought that's how it's supposed to feel. I didn't mind. Lovely chatting to you," then walked out. Ligna Kane edit. Spoke to my friend last night. I totally didn't do this story justice. The laceration was sustained in a machete attack. 2 guys tried to break into the man's house and one slashed at him, but he fought them off long enough until a neighbor started to run over and they scarpered. Such a relevant detail, how could I have forgotten? He had to clean the wound out thoroughly, which is even more painful than suturing. And to those of you pointing out the Flanders inaccuracy, that's purely my incorrect paraphrasing. It was WW2, so ignore the trench comment. I'll refrain from the obvious "I'm a Dr. Jim, not a historian" line. Or perhaps I won't. You said talking about experiences, can we hear some of that too? I wasn't the doc in that story, so I'm afraid I don't know the specifics, but I can offer you another one from another friend. I'll just copy and paste something he wrote. I met an old man in his late 80s a few years ago. He had started to develop dementia. Deafness can contribute to confusion, so I asked about exposure to noise. He told me he had fought with a tank regiment in WW2 and one day a gun had fired with him too close. His wife said tell him where it happened, and he shyly refused at first, but I pressed him, and he told me the tank was firing at the gates of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp as they liberated it. Later in the war he was the driver of the armed patrol which arrested Admiral Karl Donitz, who was briefly the president of Germany after the suicide of Hitler. The sweet but sad thing is he thought no one would be interested. He had started to develop dementia. That reminds me of a friend of mine who told a story about his grandfather. His grandfather never talked about the war. All they knew was that he was arrested by the Germans for helping the resistance here in Norway. But when he started to get dementia, he started to think he was back in the war again. They would often find him in his room, sad and scared with his suitcase packet, and waiting for the Germans to take him away. A doctor here. My intern year in residency, I saw a 17-year-old kid who, when while playing hockey, tried to stop a puck with a gloved hand. It struck his fingertip, injuring the base of his nail, causing a significant deformity. His nail bed needed repair, which requires first removing the nail. That is done by bluntly dissecting reed, separating the nail from the tissue below it. If your stomach didn't turn reading that and imagining it, congratulations, you have no soul. Typically, we use a numbing agent to eliminate sensation to the entire finger using something called a digital block. I put it in. After 10 minutes, he still felt me touching his fingertip. I tried putting some around the nail. He still felt everything. His mother said his father actually had a similar thing. Lidocaine didn't work on him. I offered him a different numbing medicine. We can inject Benadryl in that case, or even knocking him out. He looked at me in the eyes and said, "Doc, just take it off." Without anything? Yeah, it's fine. They fix our cuts without numbing medicine. But it's gonna hurt a lot. I have to scrape. I know. So I went at it. He grabbed a towel with his other hand and I went to work. 45 minutes later, the nail was off. He was repaired, and I replaced the nail in its rightful place. The kid didn't even make a noise. TL. Doctor, hockey players are fucking badass. Fire/medic here. Farmers seem to be tough. One time a guy pulled into the front ramp, got out of his truck, and walked up holding his severed forearm in his other arm. Get him in the truck, take off. Along the way he states he lived down the road and wanted to get to us quickly. When asked why he didn't call 911, he replied, "I just cut my arm, I ain't dying." Also had a battle of the bulge vet tell me he didn't need a blanket. It was -7 with wind chill. My grandma grew up on a farm in Alberta and was unbelievably tough. She once broke her finger by slamming it in a car door and splintered it herself with popsicle sticks and duct tape. Later her appendix burst, but we didn't find out until they took her to the hospital because she passed out at dinner in the retirement home. Said she hadn't wanted to bother anyone by making a fuss. Finally, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. It spread through her entire digestive system. After she went into hospice, my mom was cleaning out grandma's apartment and found every single prescription bottle of painkillers mom had picked up at the pharmacy for her, unopened in a drawer. Knowing mom would eventually find them, my grandma had written a note saying she preferred to keep her mind clear. She was seriously badass. Edit, sweet. I tune out to read a cheesy romance novel where the hero is a totally unbelievable and super hot cowboy, and what do you know? I come back to stories about everyone's badass Canadian grandparents. So great. Grandparents are awesome, aren't they? Edit 2. Cut my finger on the lid of a can tonight. Bitched about it all night. I'm convinced I'm going to die of septic shock in my sleep. So my grandma, I'm not. Yup. My old man is a lifelong farmer. A couple of years back, he was chasing some escaped calves, and while climbing over a fence, managed to break his ankle, which wouldn't have been so bad if he hadn't kept chasing the damn calves. Rounded them up, got them into a holding pen, and then asked if I would be kind enough to drive him to the Edit. Last year, he also nearly severed the tip of his thumb. Was mooring his boat, and it pitched unexpectedly, and the rope got caught. He just superglued it back together. Document. 50-year-old guy with a massive heart attack just lying there chillin'. Ask him his pain level. Deadpan. Just a little. 5-year-old boy with both forearm bones fractured and dislocated. Playing on iPad with other arm. 60-year-old lady slips, falls, destroys pelvic bone. Just wants one Tylenol, and scooches out of bed wanting to walk home. After much convincing, she begrudgingly accepted that might not be a great idea. There are some badass people out there. Some edits. Yes, I'm aware there are silent heart attacks. There are 2 bones in the forearm. He broke both bones in the same arm. Unfortunately, he does not have a third arm. EMT here. I once took a kid, about 18, 19, to the screaming all the way for sunburn. Sunburn. I mean, yeah, sunburn isn't fun, but this kid was claiming 9/10 pain and whimpering. I was astounded. Charge nurse and I giggled about it for weeks. Edit. A lot of you have suffered from some horrendous sunburn it seems. Ouch. That does sound like some squirm-inducing pain. This guy was barely pink and hadn't tried anything on his own yet. Only 9/10. Most of my whimpering patients have 13/10 pain. The ones that worry me are the ones that say they are in 4/10 and are sitting perfectly still, trying not to move because every movement makes the pain a 10. Oh yes. Eyes shut, head tipped back, clenched fists equals we gotta go. Now, what is usually wrong then? People have an unusual sixth sense for when they are going to die, or if something is gravely wrong. There is a point where either the pain or this sense of doom is so strong that the patient, who normally is freaking out if something legitimately bad is going on, suddenly gets quiet. The feeling of doom in the room is almost palpable. There have been instances when I walk in the room and suddenly the hair on the back of my neck stands up. Hopefully the pain is just something excruciating yet relatively tame, like really bad gallstones or a blocked bowel, or maybe it's something more terrifying, like an aortic aneurysm, a ruptured appendix, or an ME. In this case I don't want to dick around on scene with extra questions. I want to get them to a surgeon as soon as possible. I was a tech in the when the EMTs brought in an elderly woman with what they said was a sprained ankle. She had slipped while mopping a floor at work and her coworker had called it in. Turned out she had broken both of the bones in the lower part of her leg, but was sweetly chatting with us. I was impressed as soon as I saw this raise. EMTs had no idea and had splintered her ankle over where her bones were broken. Typically, broken bones in the legs, unless there's a huge amount of angulation/displacement, do not cause a ton of pain unless moved. We see that often in the old people with hip fractures as well. They're usually sitting there still and having no pain. but the second you try to move it, they're in excruciating pain. Same goes with trying to bear weight. Not a doctor, but my goddaughter was born very prematurely, requiring a major open heart surgery at 2 weeks old. We were told by her docs that, since she'd gone through so much surgical trauma the first few weeks of her life, as a neonate, her pain receptors/nerve endings would not develop normally. They gave us the example that, if she put her hand on a hot stove as a kid, she would have sustained a severe burn, before feeling any pain whatsoever. She never cried as a kid when she got shot/fell down/banged into things, even when it was enough to draw blood. I suspect her medical history was the cause. Doctors used to perform surgery on babies without any kind of anesthesia because they thought they wouldn't feel pain. But they did. I believe the reasoning was that if they were young enough they wouldn't form memories, so in the long term it wouldn't affect them. Anesthesia was risky at the best of times, and since babies are so small it was easy to kill them. It's probably a logical solution to a hard choice, but still pretty nasty to think about. Working in a hospital has taught me the downside of abusing painkillers/drugs. Patients constantly come in here with long-term substance abuse issues, and now that they are actually hurt, MVC, broke bones, etc., you can give them enough drugs to put down a horse, and they still feel everything. That is one of my biggest fears. I had major back surgery when I was 14, so I pretty much live with constant pain. I will do everything I can to avoid taking a Vicodin, so that when I get older and I really start to hurt, I haven't built up a tolerance. The only thing that sucks about it is that pills expire before I use them all, and so when I really do need them, getting a new doctor to prescribe them is really hard. They always try to treat me like a junkie trying to score, and while it is understandable, it really pisses me off.